It's about discovering those hidden parts of yourself that you hide away. Because we're afraid, we're ashamed of our darkness, we're ashamed of our shadow. But in actually bringing that to light, we can't be truly authentic until we actually. That's the thing. Like what I notice as well is if you're triggered by another person's appearance or personality, this is a very good way of actually understanding what you're hiding yourself.
So we always start with a quote, and you picked the quote this week. So I will read you the quote. It is by Carl Jung. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is a really good one.
Yeah, I love Carl Jung. He taught me a lot about shadow work, and by making the darkness conscious, it's about discovering those hidden parts of yourself that you hide away. Because we're afraid, we're ashamed of our darkness, we're ashamed of our shadow. But in actually bringing that to light, we actually discover some very beautiful parts of ourselves.
Yeah. And I think often we label traits as good or bad, and it's about seeing that all traits there's a benefit to all personality traits, isn't there?
It's what makes us unique is our own, is what we think. Well, what we think we should be ashamed of is actually the parts of us that makes us us.
Yeah.
That makes us individuals.
So, what was I going to say? So, where it says one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, what's it saying?
Yeah, it's saying we think that if we just imagine all the sunshine of ourselves, that's going to make us who we are. But we can't be truly authentic until we actually uncover the dark sides. We have a light and dark side. We can't have one without the other. It's like you can't have love without hate. You can't appreciate.
Isn't it?
Exactly. That's the masculine and feminine energy. You need the inner balance. And because of society, because of our peers, because of family, we hide certain aspects of ourselves because we've been told we should be ashamed of certain things. When in actual fact, we shouldn't be ashamed of certain things. Like we can even hiding a simple thing that you like a certain band or a certain pop singer. That's suppressing who you truly are. And in suppressing who you truly are, that actually makes your darkness darker. And, we're all here, preaching light, but you cannot have light without the dark. Exactly. And as I said, it's your darkness that makes you beautiful.
And it's duality, isn't it? It's like you can't have up without a down.
Exactly.
You can't have left without a right. Like there's got to, for a point of reference, there has to be an equal but opposite, doesn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing, a lot of times we think that there's certain things that we need to be ashamed of. But as I said, it's just parts of who we truly are. And I think our creativity and our adventurous side comes out of our dark side. And, you have to listen to that. A lot of times, I'll give you an example. If we don't listen to our dark side, it's going to go crazy. I liken it to a small child. If a small child is pulling on your arm and you ignore it, it's going to get louder. They're going to just get louder and louder and throw a tantrum. If you ignore your darkness, that's going to get louder and louder and throw a tantrum. Like when I was doing my first awakening, waking up to my life, there was all kinds of voices in my head. But as I became more pure, that voice, the darker voice, got louder. And I was like, how is there such an impure voice within me when I'm actually a good person? And that's when I discovered Carl Jung and shadow work. It's like if you ignore your shadow, it's going to get dark.
Yeah, it's like if I just pretend I'm this perfect thing, and only these things are right, then you can't be authentic, can you? That's not authenticity. Nobody is all light without the light causes shadows, doesn't it? And it's that really being. I think it's like anything in life, isn't it? Too much of anything is not good. So any extreme trait can be detrimental, but all the traits have valuable assets. They bring great things to the table. It is amazing to be to be vulnerable, to be able to be vulnerable. But if you're vulnerable all the time, that's problematic.
Exactly.
Just like aggression all the time is problematic, but at times you need to be aggressive for protection, perhaps. You know, you've got to be able to reach into those different personality styles, don't you? That those traits for different parts of your life, for different things. So it's about having a balance, and that's what doing shadow work is about, isn't it? It's like integrating both, so that you get like a balance. So you're not an extreme of any, but more balanced.
Exactly. Like I give you an example. I spoke to you about this the other day. I have a that's what she said personality, and anyone who knows that that's what she said jokes is a little bit naughty. And I like that part of myself. I like that I have that balance. But when I have too much darkness, I can get a bit curvy. I don't like that. But if I have too much light, I get a bit prudish. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
I like the balance in the middle. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, it's about owning the parts of yourself that you think you should hide. You know, we should be proud of those parts, because that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us special.
Yeah, and it's about self-awareness as well, isn't it? I think.
That's the thing. Like, what I notice as well is if you're triggered by another person's appearance or personality, this is a very good way of actually understanding what you're hiding yourself. You know, I used to get like really triggered by certain female actresses or TV presenters. You know, angry and looking at them just like to piss me off for no reason. And like a few years later, I started watching them again, and now I love them. And I'm like, oh, what was it? Like, what was it that I was triggered by? It was obviously something that I was hiding from myself. You know, when we're triggered by another person just by their appearance, it's obviously something within you that you've been suppressing. You know, and that's like, you know, it comes to clothes as well. Like years ago, I used to get triggered by people wearing colorful clothes. Now I get triggered by people wearing black clothes, because I used to always wear black and now I wear color.
Yeah.
You know, so it's parts of ourselves that we're hiding. So ask yourself, if you're triggered by another person's personality or appearance, what part of them are you wanting for yourself, or what are you hiding from yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting actually you mentioning that, because when I was a teenager, I would want to wear mainly black. I would have a bit of colour, but then I'd have like vibrantly crazy coloured hair. And it was kind of like I'm choosing to stand out. I never felt like I fitted in anyway. And it was kind of like I'm choosing to stand out in my way, for people to point and stare for things I've chosen rather than things I don't feel I can control, if that makes sense. But then I went through this stage where like I kind of got rid of that sort of persona of mine. You know, I wasn't wearing all dark clothes. I wasn't like a mosher and wearing, you know, like dog chains and punk hair and stuff. And I had kind of normal hair and normalish clothes. And but then when I'd see them, like the younger generation dressed in black and with bright coloured hair or whatever, I'd be like, oh, look at them try to be different all in the same way. And I was like, and it was almost like a bit of hatred of myself from my youth, that I was like, I'm being different in the same way my mates are being different. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's interesting how like it's almost like a reflection of myself that annoyed myself, you know.
Yeah, like when you say that, like years ago, I used to get triggered. Like I swore I'd never get blonde hair. Like I always dyed my hair plum or red, and then I started dyeing them pink and purple. It was only up till about a year ago, and then I just went for blonde. And like for me, that was completely alien. But like I remember being triggered by blondes before, and now I love it. You know, it's weird. It's a weird kind of dynamic. And as I said, now. Like I was, you know, there's parts of myself that I hid as a teenager. I wore goth clothes all the time, but yet when I went to my dad's, I wore a Barbie pink dress. You know, so it's weird when you allow yourself to bring out those hidden aspects of yourself. But it's fun. You know, that's where your creativity lies. You know, years ago I would have been ashamed to say I liked a Justin Bieber song. Now I even say I fancy Justin Bieber, and I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me. You know what I mean? Like, fuck it. Like, these are parts of it. Like, what is it? Like, once you're not hurting anyone, you know, there's nothing actually in your shadow that's that bad. But if you leave it unchecked, I believe this is how serial killers are formed. If you leave your shadow unchecked, it will develop into psychosis or, you know, dangerous aspects. This is why balance is so important.
Or it can, depression, actually. I think speaking from my own experience, I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to fit in other people's boxes, if you see what I mean. Like even when I didn't feel like I was able to fit into most people's box, I forced myself into the box of the alternative people. And it's like what you're saying. It's like, so I wouldn't admit to liking things that they wouldn't like for fear that I wouldn't fit in with them either. And it's this real, for me, it's very much like this deep thing about finding a place where I'm like other people. And actually the wonderful thing is that we're probably all very much alike underneath all our false, all the masks, all the ways that we show up for people. Yeah, and actually, it would be boring if we were all carbon copies of each other, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
That's what makes the world.
I'm seeing more and more of that every day. You go down the street, and every second person looks the exact same. And you're like, because of all the fillers and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, what are you doing? Where's the uniqueness in this world? Why does everyone want to look the same? You know, and this is what leads, I think, to anxiety and depression. If you're pretending to be something you're not, you're going to have imbalance in your life, and it's going to show up in disruptive or, you know, aggression or volatile ways. If you're not living to your true purpose, you're going to end up even taking drinks or drugs to try and escape the reality you're in because you're not living your true authenticity.
Well, who is it? Jim Carrey talks about that. I love the way he says, because he says depression is the need for deep rest from the character that you've been playing. And I think that's such a great explanation of what depression is, you know. Like, people can feel depression in different ways, but for me, certainly that rings very true. That, like, you're desperately trying to show up as something that is valuable and worthy, because the problem is you don't give yourself that validation and worth. So you're desperately trying to find it by fitting in to what you think other people want you to be. And it's it's a difficult thing to do, and eventually it's burnout, isn't it? That's what it is. It's like
that's it. It leads to burnout.
You make me happy.
Yeah, you lose your life force, you lose your energy, you lose every part of who you are because you're trying to be something you're not. Yeah. You're trying to put on this mask to fit into this world. When that world you don't even belong there. You belong in your own world. All of our molds are unique, and we need to embrace those sides of ourselves. We need to embrace, because that's what makes us special. That is what makes us special. You know, our quirks, our likes and dislikes, that's what makes us who we really are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, how would we spot our shadow? So, like, if you knew to shadow work, you're like, oh, hold on a minute. I think I do get triggered by other people, and there are aspects of myself that I wouldn't want to show other people because, you know, I really want to fit in. Maybe a bit of a people pleaser. Like, where could somebody start to start unpacking their shadow? What advice would you give?
Like, it's about being aware. So be aware. If you were looking at somebody and you're judging them by their laziness, that's obviously a part of you that you're actually hiding. And, like, you know, we're all lazy. Not lazy to the detriment that we're couch potatoes, but we all have our lazy days, and that's okay. When you say I'm lazy, it actually makes you less lazy. I don't know. When we suppress the parts of ourselves that we see in other people. So, like, yeah, if you see somebody and you're bitching about them because they're doing this a certain way, you have to ask yourself, what is it within them that you're missing, or that you're suppressing within yourself, or that you see in yourself? So it's just being self-aware, being aware of what makes you tick, as in, you know, what is that person doing that is affecting you? Because effectively, that is something within you that you're hiding. You know, and that's what I recognized with myself before. Well, I was only after I did shadow work, really, is looking back. How can you be triggered by just looking at a person before they even speak? You know, there has to be something about that person that you want for yourself, or that's inside you that you want to bring out, but you don't know how. And I think that was it as well. Like, when I looked at those beautiful actresses or TV presenters, I probably looked at them, and a part of me felt like I couldn't ever be like that. That was why I was triggered. But now that I'm evolving, I know that I am embodying that kind of energy, and I can be a beautiful, successful woman. Yeah. Whereas before, I was looking at them afraid that I was never going to be able to be successful or beautiful.
Yeah, it's like envy, really.
It was.
Admitting to yourself that it is.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not me, it's them.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it was such a transformation because now I watch these girls and I'm like, I love them. I think they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And nothing has changed except for how I see myself. Yeah.
Powerful women.
And that's it.
Go girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the awareness you kind of see. Because like if you're triggered by an appearance or a person's personality, it's because there's some part of you that is hiding that part of yourself. So yeah, it is just be aware about how you perceive other people, or if you find yourself judging someone, you're actually technically judging a part of yourself.
Yeah, so it's like if you're judging somebody really harshly on certain traits, it's probably because that's in your shadow, or it's something that you want to release in yourself and you don't feel able. Now, if we go back to like how is the shadow formed, it's often formed in childhood when we are taught, perhaps it might be children are seen and not heard, it might be to be polite, it might be to not to show aggression. And so trying to live up to these ideals means that the opposite trait, which is not a bad trait if it's used at the right time, in the right proportion, all traits have a use and are good. It's having that balance. But if we have been taught either by society or by our family, our parents, that like, oh no, you don't do that, and that's frowned upon, then it can make you shove that into your shadow. I'm not going to do that because I want to be a good person, living up to these ideals, and then really judging other people that don't fulfill those ideals in your eyes, because that's the bit you're pushing away inside yourself. Yeah,
and that's true. It's from childhood. Like the simple thing of being told not to cry, grow up, you can't do that, you're too old. We're told to grow up too quickly, so we're actually, our inner child gets pushed down into a shadow because we're not allowed to be childlike anymore. Or there's like for example, when I was a teenager, before I became a goth, all my female friends were like, oh, we can't watch this movie because it's too childish, we have to be adults. We were 12. Yeah. Jesus, and we're like, we can't watch the cartoon anymore, we have to watch this adult movie, whatever. Then there was another thing around pink. You can't like pink now because it's too childish. And I started wearing black all the time. But I rebelled against that, obviously, for my dad's, because I wore the pinkest dress ever. But like, that's it. Like, there's certain aspects as a child that you're like, don't do that, grow up. And this is all suppression. We have to hide these parts of ourselves. This is going to lead to a very bad imbalance. This is what I believe leads to anger, frustration, because we're living in a false mask.
Also, you can see this in children as they hit teenage years. Like if they have had very children at teenagers, they do rebel, don't they? But those values and those standards that you hold them to, that tends to be the ones that spilling out, because they are developing a shadow there, aren't they?
That's true. Like, in fairness, I rebelled as a teenager, and I was only looking back now that I understood why. I was a girl transitioning into womanhood in a house with two men. You know what I mean? So I was in a sense, because I aspired to be like them. They were my role models. So therefore, I was suppressing my femininity. Yeah. And that's why I rebelled. And I look back now and I forgive myself for that, because Jesus, I didn't do half bad for somebody who's going through that.